This recipe is a combination of two pork chop methods I absolutely adore. We got Frank Prisinzano's brown butter method combined with Gordon Ramsay's pork chop with sweet and sour peppers. See link in the description. Pork chops are cheaper than steaks, they're healthy, and while most people have bad associations with dried out, overcooked chops, these are juicy and delicious. And when paired with the rich nuttiness of brown butter and the zing of the sweet and sour peppers, onions, and apples, it is an all-around great meal that will certainly impress. Let's get to it. The night before we cook these, we are going to score the fat cap to prevent the pork chop from curling in the hot pan and then dry brine them. Dry brining simply means generously salting your meat 2 days to 4 hours before cooking. The salt will draw moisture to the surface of the meat via osmosis. The salt is then dissolved by this moisture and is then absorbed into the meat via diffusion. This process reshapes and dissolves muscle proteins, allowing the meat to absorb and retain much more moisture than if you simply salted it right before cooking. This isn't fully necessary, but salting your beef, pork, and poultry right when you bring it back from the grocery store is a great habit to develop in the kitchen. Cover in plastic wrap and allow to rest in the fridge overnight, but even a few hours will help. Now for the mise en place. You'll need 2 bell peppers, 1 red onion, a yellow onion, and a Honeycrisp apple. The best technique to quickly slice a bell pepper is to first remove the top, then lay the pepper on the flat surface, then, imagining that you're cutting the peel off of an orange, cut around the outside on the raised parts of the pepper. This will leave you with all the bell pepper flesh so you can toss the ribs and seeds in one fell swoop. With these pieces, thinly slice the peppers into a nice julienne. For the onions, chop off the root and stem ends, then cut it in half, then cut thin slices in the root to stem direction. For the apple, make 4 cuts to remove the core and similarly cut into thin slices. Squeeze a bit of lemon juice on the apple to prevent it from browning while we cook our pork. For this recipe, you will also need 5 cloves of garlic. Finely mince 3 of the cloves for the pan sauce and set aside in a bowl. Then lightly crush the other 2 to use for butter basting. Now it's time to cook our brined pork. In a stainless steel or cast iron pan, melt half a stick of butter over medium heat. Stainless steel will make this easier because you'll be able to see when the butter is browned. Once the water has cooked out of the butter, it will stop sizzling and begin to brown. This is when you add your pork, as well as a bunch of sage leaves and the 2 whole garlic cloves. Now this is a lower and slower sear than you normally see, but it makes an incredible crust, especially on a thick cut piece of meat like this. To baste, tilt the pan to pull the butter towards you and using your longest metal spoon, bathe the chops in that delicious brown butter. This cooks and caramelizes the pork chop from both sides simultaneously, gradually building a deeper and deeper crust. Flip every 2 minutes. Compared to searing in oil, butter is full of milk proteins and sugars that will contribute to that deep, nutty brown flavor. If your butter ever begins to smoke, this means the butter is burning and you should lift the pan off of the heat and lower the stove a bit. However, there should be a nice, steady sizzle the entire time you're cooking. After around 5 flips, turn the chops onto the fat cap and tilt the pan to render and brown that fat cap in the pool of butter. Once they reach 140 degrees Fahrenheit internal, pull the chops, garlic, and sage leaves onto a plate and loosely tent with foil. Into the pan with all that porky, sagey brown butter goodness, add your peppers, onions, and apples. Turn the heat on high, add a big pinch of salt and around 5 cranks of black pepper. Scrape the fond off of the bottom of the pan and sweat for around 6 minutes. You do not want to overcook these into mushy oblivion, you still want some nice crunch and fresh taste in there. Add in 2 tablespoons of brown sugar and 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. Stir it until the sugar is dissolved into a nice thick glaze. Add your minced garlic, a tablespoon of smoked paprika, a small shake of cayenne, a tablespoon of Dijon mustard, a light dash of cinnamon, and the juice of half a lemon. Stir and toss this to emulsify, then taste a pepper and adjust your seasoning to taste with kosher salt, black pepper, and more brown sugar as needed until balance is achieved. To carve, place your rested chop on a board. This is a boned-in pork chop, so cut along the bone to separate, then make thick slices on a bias and fan out, making sure to show the camera that perfectly juicy pink center. Make a nice little mound of your peppers, spoon over some of the sauce from the bottom of the pan, and garnish with those crispy sage leaves and some freshly chopped parsley. Eat with your hands because you're civilized like that, and enjoy pork chops in their most delicious, juicy form. And that is it. The full recipe and ingredient list are in the description down below. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.
Holy oh, fuck. It's melting in my mouth.
This is like, oh my god.
That's one of the best things I've ever eaten in my life.
This can't be.